over the last few years, limitation, lockdown, even that on some strange level, and I'm not saying I agree with some of the stuff that happened, but even on some strange level in the spiritual evolutionary video game that is called life, which is the process of awakening and evolution, limitation, lockdown, or even that is serving you and I, all of us, to find the source of freedom that is within. Because when we find the source of true infinite freedom that is within us, that you are beyond this physicality and limitation, then we become truly free. And then we become truly powerful. Then we realize that nothing outside of us, no government, no president, no person, nothing outside of us can lock you down, because your soul is free. It's like Mandela was in prison, but was not in prison. And many of us are free, but we're living in prison. The prison of mind, the prison of beliefs, the prison of limitation, the prison of childhood, the prison of fear. And so I think part of the game of limitation is to force us to awaken to the freedom that is our nature, so that we can be in the world but not of the world. And once we awaken to the I am divine, I am unlimited, I am infinite, then we can start, you could say, relating to the world in a whole different way and become powerful creators of our reality and our experience in a whole different way. And so
Hey, Kute, welcome to the Awaken Heart podcast.
It's good to be here.
It's good to have you here. And I'm so excited to have you on. And before we get started, I just want to tell a little story real quick. So I just recently moved back to Michigan. My mom has Alzheimer's. My dad recently passed. That's one of her photos that she did when she was really young. So I was unpacking all my stuff, and I got to my books, and I start to unpack my books, and there's glue that spilled all over my book. So I had to surrender some of these books, and I've been carrying around for years, and I just had to say, I have to let some of these go. It's okay. It's meant for a reason. But then there was this one in there.
Oh, very cool.
You.Are.The.One. See how it has no cover? There was glue all over it. I had to unstick it. And I said, I cannot lose this book. And it reminded me, I wanted to reach out to you to be on my podcast. I'm like, you know what? I have to reach out to him. Maybe once I get settled in, get my stuff and get settled in. Maybe in August, I'll reach out to him. Well, lo and behold, 3 days later, I get an email from your booker, Monica.
Wow.
Yes. She's like, oh, Kute Blackson, can we have him on your show? You know, his voice needs to be heard. Blah, blah. I'm like, oh my God, is this a joke? This is a joke. It's on Instagram. Okay, whatever. Okay, sure. I'll have Kute on. And I didn't hear anything for a couple of days or a week. And then she reached out to me again and sent me an email. I'm like, oh my God, that is so awesome. So Kute, when I started this podcast like 2.5 years ago, and I know you interviewed with Michelle Sorrell recently. I'd taken her masterclass with her and an accelerator course. You're the one that I always wanted to have on my show. And I was just building up getting a lot of shows under my belt. And I've been meaning to reach out to you. And look at it, came full circle. So I'm so excited to have you on here, Kute. Your voice you've helped me so much in my own lifetime. I've been following you for many, many years. I first heard, I think you were doing something with Michael Beckwith. There was something on there, and I heard your voice, and you had all this energy, and I had just gone through this horrible breakup, and you were doing a glow event in Los Angeles, and I went to that, and then it led to the Man Breakthrough experience, and then it led to transformational coaching with you, and then this book. Before we get to the one that you just wrote, Magic of Surrender, this book you offered, if anyone that bought You.Are.The.One, I think everybody should pick up this book. It's pretty amazing. You offered a 2-day manifestation seminar for anyone that had bought the book, and you go full out. Like, it was 2 full days of a conference. So I got to attend that as well. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Your voice is one that I've always wanted my audience to hear. And you've got such a beautiful message all around about how powerful we are and how, it's just surrendering and allowing life to move through us. And for my audience members that don't know much about you, can you give a little background about yourself? And you've got such an amazing story about where you
Yeah.
came from, your family, your father, and this beautiful book that looks it's written almost like an ode to your mother and your love for your mother and how it taught you so much.
Mm. Yeah, look, in a nutshell, I could probably talk for days on my history and background. I was born in
Yes.
Ghana, West Africa. My father's from Ghana, mother's Japanese, grew up in London, live in the US. So I feel like I'm a citizen of the world from everywhere and nowhere all at the same time. But for me, from a very young age, I was a very empathetic kid. So I would feel people's pain very deeply. And there was always a part of me that wanted to alleviate suffering in some way. I just didn't know how to do that or what form that would take. And so as a child, also one of my first memories, some would say I had a bit of an unusual childhood, but for me, it just felt normal. It's all I knew. And one of my first memories as a young boy, I remember seeing a crippled woman crawling on the floor and on the ground, and she picks up the gravel, the sand that this man walks on, wipes it on her face and stands up. And so week after week, I grew up seeing, I guess, miracles, blind people seeing and people standing up out of wheelchairs. And the same man whose gravel was picked up would look at this woman in a wheelchair and say, "Why are you in this wheelchair? You're not sick, stand up." Or he would look at someone who would come in with crutches and they couldn't walk, hadn't walked in years, and he would say, "Throw your crutches away." And so this man was my father. He built 300 churches in Ghana, West Africa, a huge church in London, hundreds of thousands of followers, 5,000 people every Sunday, kind of like an agape-ish type of thing in the UK, sort of. My father's sort of a cross between TD Jakes, Michael Beckwith, and Sai Baba / Muktananda rolled into one. And so I grew up with a sense of possibilities. I didn't know, like, it was normal for me. I didn't know that miracles, the miraculous, wasn't possible because these were things I saw with my own eyes day in, day out. And so as a young boy, around age 8, I was thrown into the audience, and that's when my speaking career began. And my father said, "Speak." And so words started coming out of my mouth, and that began that journey. And at age 14 was another pivotal moment when I was ordained as a minister. Imagine a 14-year-old kid being ordained, but I was basically given the mandate to take over my father's organization. And that's also when I knew that basically my entire life was set out for me, but I knew in that moment that this was not my path, this was not my destiny, this was not my future. It was a deep knowing inside of me. But I think, like many of us, I was too afraid to follow my heart. I was too afraid to follow my knowing. I was too afraid to follow my truth. My fear was if I spoke my truth, then I would lose my father's love, and I would be outcast, and I'd be alone, and I'd be by myself. And so I said nothing and went along with it for 4 years of just trying to fit myself into a box of becoming who I thought I needed to be in order to get love and validation and approval, and became miserable in the process. And so 4 years of just squelching my truth, I turned 18 and I looked into my future. And as I looked into my future, I saw I had certain decisions to make. And this was another, you could say, pivotal moment in the course of my life. Whereas I looked into my future, I saw that I could take over my father's churches and, fulfill the expectations of my father and everyone else around. But as I projected into my future, age 20, age 30, age 40, age 50, age 60, on and on, I saw that if I didn't have myself, if I didn't have my integrity, if I didn't have my own heart, my own soul, my own truth, what kind of success is that? That you can't be truly fulfilled and happy being someone that you're not. You can't be truly fulfilled and happy living someone else's life. And that if I lie, and I saw that if I lied to myself as a young man, I would literally have to lie to myself for the rest of my life in order to get love and validation and approval. And yet I was terrified because this was all I knew. And so I basically renounced everything. I knew what I had to do. It was one of the most difficult things for me in my life because I loved my father, even though we weren't close, and I wanted to make him happy and make everyone happy. And there was so much pressure on me as a young man. And yet I simultaneously felt this undeniable calling in my soul. I felt as though something was pulling me specifically to go into the field of personal growth and spirituality, because as a young kid, I would sneak into my father's into his office. And he had literally 1,000 books of self-help, spirituality, Osho, Krishnamurti, Wayne Dyer, Louise Hay, Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson. And so as a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid, I began to become obsessed with transformation and self-help and just trying to understand, who am I and why am I here? What's the purpose of my life? Where do I come from? Where are we going? And so this became my, you could say, obsession. And so all the books I read, many of the modern day authors, Jack Canfield, Marianne, Louise, they lived in LA, they lived in Southern California, they lived in San Diego. So for me, this was the Mecca. And so I felt my soul calling me. It was something that was beyond me. And I think when your soul guides you, when your soul moves you, when your soul gives you a directive, it often doesn't make sense to your mind, and it's often not convenient or comfortable, but I knew I had to listen to my soul. And what I found throughout my life, and we can talk about different examples, but what I experienced throughout my life is that whenever you listen to your soul, even if it doesn't make sense, you will, and you don't compromise that guidance, you will always end up in the right place at the right time with the right people doing the right thing, even though the route that you take may not be the one that you most expect or make sense. Things will often make sense in retrospect, looking back. But if you follow your soul, you will never be off track, even if the track that you think you're taking isn't the right track. It's always the right track. And so I've seen it in my life, the power of letting your soul lead, the power of being guided by your soul and being obedient to your soul. And so that's what I chose to do. And knew I had to have that conversation with my father, which, doesn't sound like a big deal. Have a conversation with your dad. Yeah, but for me, my dad was this figure, and I grieved it for 4 years before I could muster the courage to have that conversation. And I had that conversation shaking and terrified. But I knew for me, it felt bigger than me. The calling of my soul felt bigger than me. And I had the conversation, told him I'm not taking over. Long story short, ended up winning a green card in the green card lottery. And that's what enabled me to come to the US with 2 suitcases, $800 in my pocket, and just following a dream as an 18, 19-year-old kid, just landing in LAX, Venice Beach, and following my dream. I went and found many of the mentors and teachers that I read about, the Wayne Dyers and Louise Hayes and Marianne's of the world, and studied with some of them, learned from some of them, and went through my own evolution and journey as a young man. And I got to the point which really sort of set the foundation for what I'm doing. But I got to the point where I was tired of reading the books. I was tired of reading through someone else's experience. I wanted to know God. I wanted to know truth. I wanted to know reality. I wanted to know the nature of life for myself through my own experience. And I broke up with my girlfriend at the time. I went through this experience with a talk show that I was trying to promote that was a bit disappointing. And I was guided to travel. And I ended up walking the Camino in northern Spain, ended up in India. And it was my time, spent 4 or 5 months in India. And it was my time in India that really, I would say, cracked me open to another dimension of life and reality and my purpose, that set the foundation for who I am and the work I'm doing. And so it was out of that I came back to LA and began working with people one-on-one. And slowly, you could say, my way of working and uncoaching people evolved and emerged, and was guided to create certain processes, like the one-on-one processes, like man breakthroughs and Bali's and different things that over the years have transformed life. So that's a bit of the story.
And I'm thinking about there's an excerpt in your book here where you were on the train station in India. I know India taught you a lot, this magic of surrender.
Yeah.
And it was really, everybody can use this really in any aspect of their life, where you were just like, your train was 9 hours late. and you're flipping out. I'd be flipping out, just like cursing India, cursing the train station. Why can't anything be on time? And you just looked around you and you saw everyone just like, having a picnic, just enjoying the moment, chatting with each other. And you're just in literally hell on that train station. And India just teaches you so much just to enjoy the present moment and to slow down. And here's a quote from your book where you said, where the man invited you to sit down next to him. And he said, "You can't control when the train is going to show up. What you can control is what you do on the platform and how you live the moments as you wait, how you meet each moment of your life, and how you relate with those around you. I invite you to embrace what's happening as it's happening. Heaven or hell is not outside of you on the platform, it's in your mind. It's not about where you are out there, but where you are in here." And he tapped your forehead. And that's so true in so many aspects of our life. We create our own hell by trying to control all of our situations in our life and making things happen. And I know that you always teach that there's a divine intelligence that is moving through us as long as we open up to that intelligence. And you talk a lot about following your soul and listening to your soul's calling. But with so many of us wrapped up in the Western world and being in our mind and doing and having, how would somebody begin to tap into their soul and start listening and trusting the guidance that they're giving from inside of them instead of like the mind that's all
I think I'll answer that in different ways. I think that we are afraid that if we listen to our soul, that shit's gonna fall apart. If we listen to our soul, all hell will break loose. If we listen to our soul, we're not going to be in control. It goes back to this whole fear of surrender. And so I just kind of want to address this idea of surrender because it's connected. There's this fear of, if I really let go and trust bigger than myself or what I think of as myself, the worst is going to happen. Like if I surrender, this idea that surrender is weak, surrender is passive, that if you surrender, you won't manifest your goals, dreams, and desires. If you surrender, you're going to be led astray, you're going to be a victim, you're going to be a doormat, you're going to be taken advantage of, you're going to get less. And I actually think, no, if you truly listen to your soul, if you truly surrender, what if you got more? What if you got more than you could have planned and intended with your conscious ego, personality, intention, and awareness and willpower? What if it was better and maybe not what you expected, but better? And so for me, surrender and this path of listening to your soul is a different path than we're trained and conditioned to by society and life and media and education. It's a letting go of control, or I should say, the illusion that we are in control in the first place. Because to me, control is a master addiction. Surrender is when we stop trying to force life to fit our limited idea of how we think it should be and who we think we should be and how we think a relationship should be, so that we can be available and open to this divine intelligence, this intelligence of life that is functioning and unfolding. There is an intelligence of life right now that as you and I are speaking, it is breathing you. It is breathing me. We're not sitting here going, oh my God, I have to breathe. I have to do some special breath technique. I have to hold my nose, hold it. It's breathe. It's just freaking happening. You don't have to do anything. You can be Pablo Escobar, a murderer, a rapist, a yogi, a guru, a saint, a sinner. The breath is happening. This intelligence knows exactly how to digest your food. You and I aren't sitting here going, oh shit, digest. It's happening. And somehow we've sort of lost touch with that intelligence because we've been conditioned, And so I think part of why it's become hard to, or feels hard to truly surrender and let go and trust our soul, simply because we've been conditioned, and we've been conditioned to identify ourselves as the ego. And it's the ego that resists surrender. It's the ego that resists letting go. It's the ego that resists letting go of control, because we mistakenly have this idea that it's well intended, but it's limited. If I can control everything, if I can control the way you see me, if I can control my emotions, my feelings, if I can control the government, the world, the weather, my pet, my pet chihuahua, if I can control my children, if I can control everything and everyone, then maybe I won't get hurt again like I was hurt when I was 5. And so this drive for control is well intended, but it's very limited. And so it's the ego that resists letting go and resists surrender, because the job of the ego is to, number one, protect you from getting hurt like you were hurt. And the ego is really the ego is that idea of what we mistakenly believe ourselves to be based on name, body, form, mind, experience, memories, history, emotions, belief systems that we hold on to and identify as a sense of me. And so letting go and surrendering and trusting soul, trusting this intelligence can feel scary, because it's kind of surrender is kind of a death to the ego, or a death to the perceived ego, which is what we believe ourselves to be. So the degree to which we believe ourselves to be this ego structure identity is the degree to which we will often, seek control also to reinforce our sense of existence. So the job of the ego is, which is to protect you from getting hurt like you were hurt, well intended but limited. The job of the ego is to reinforce its sense of identity and existence. And so this illusory idea of, if I'm not in control, if I can be in control and be the one that is doing everything, I'm going to be the doer that makes shit happen, and I'm going to do everything, then I, as a separate sense of self, must be real. And so this attachment to doing and doership and being the one, my next book should be You Are Actually Not the One, but this idea that we are the one in a small sort of Y and small O is what blocks the flow. Because look, even Jesus, who for me was a great mystic, he was a way shower that showed us the possibility of who and what we truly were and our true divine consciousness. He was a miracle worker, but he said, it's not I, limited I, that does the work. It's the Father, call it whatever, the Father, the divine, the mother, consciousness, infinite intelligence, that does the work through me. So he knew the code. And that code was, it's not the limited self that does it, it's life that does it. And so for me, the ego is well intended, but it's the ego that resists. But what we have to realize is this ego, which we mistakenly believe ourselves to be, is not even real. It is not a thing. It is a process of identification. Like a bicycle is a thing. The pedaling is a process. And through activity and through life and through religion, education, society, parents, life, family, everything that we've been told from our conditioned environment, the ego gets reinforced. And so I think that we were all born free. We were all born in touch with flow, in touch with our soul. If you look at a baby, they're in touch with their soul. We were all that once. Even the worst person on the planet, they were in touch with that essence once. You look at them and they're just pure light, beingness, source, energy. I don't care if you're Escobar, Trump, Biden. I don't care if you're a burglar. We were all that pure, free consciousness, essence, surrendered to the flow of life. At one time, we cried when we felt like crying. We pooped when we felt like pooping. We would jump on the table and just dance. There was no self-consciousness. You look into a child's eyes, they're just being, they're just free. And so what happens is we slowly start getting conditioned. We incarnate into this human experience alive, free. We meet our parents, and God bless them, they're doing the best that they know how to do based on their parents and their grandparents. And so maybe dad was crazy, maybe mom was an alcoholic, maybe they were fighting all the time and that was painful. Maybe they were good people, but they just didn't know how to meet our emotional needs, and that was painful. And so the first thing is we learn all sorts of strategies to shut down, disconnect, not feel, suppress. And then we kind of close our hearts as a strategy of control, as a sort of defense mechanism to not feel the pain and protect ourselves from the pain of our environment and what's going on around us. And then we learn I would say all sorts of strategies to get love, validation, and approval, where we learn to contort ourselves into a certain shape to be loved. We develop a role, a mask, a persona, becoming who we think we need to be loved. And so that version of ourselves that we become is who we end up thinking that we are, but it's not. It's just a conditioned pattern. And so the degree to which we've sort of become conditioned into this person is the degree to which we're not free, the degree to which we're not free to flow, the degree to which we're not free to surrender, the degree to which we're not free to truly trusting our soul, because we're so being conditioned to believe that we are Nancy, we are Kute, we are John, we are this version. And this is why we often say, no, this is just who I am, and to let go of that. You mean to open my heart again after I've had to close my heart in order to deal with the pain of not having my needs met, because not having my needs met was so painful. So I learned to close my heart so that I didn't have to feel that pain. Now you're saying, like, surrender and trust your soul and open your heart to love again. It's like, hell no, I might get hurt again. Boom. And so that pattern of conditioning and control is not bad. It's well intended. It can be frustrating, and we sometimes get mad at ourselves, but when we understand that the set of patterns is not who we are, and the set of patterns has a positive intention, then we can step back and I think learn how to love ourselves really through those patterns, and learn how to start meeting some of those resistances, some of those ways that we control, which are really rooted in fear, and well-intended. We can start meeting some of those resistances and closures with compassion and with love and grace and tenderness. And I think the more we can bring loving to those parts of ourselves, the more healing can happen. And so I think that's where a bit of space can happen. And that's where sometimes we have to surrender to the fact we may not be surrendered. We may not be fully trusting our souls, and know that that's okay, and meet ourselves with love. And when we can hold our fear and our resistances with love and compassion, then those aspects can kind of relax, and surrender can begin to blossom, and surrender can begin to open inside of us. So we don't have to like force surrender, And so it is scary to trust your soul, especially when you don't know where the hell is it going to take you. It is scary to trust the divine intelligence when we've been conditioned to try to understand everything. It's like, if I can understand what everything means, then maybe I won't get hurt again. And so it's a well-intended sort of adaptive way of being that worked for us when we were 5, worked for us when we were 10. The challenge is we're doing it when we're 25 and 35 and 45 and 55, and it begins to limit our full expression, and it begins to limit the totality of the full expression of the divine intelligence moving through us, And so to me, the old paradigm asks a very specific question. That question tends to be like, where are you going? Because you got to know where you're going. You got to know everything. And what do you want? Now, you might get everything that you thought you wanted. But how many of us have had this experience where we've achieved what we thought we wanted, only to realize that what we thought we wanted was not what we really wanted? It was just what we thought we wanted based on who we thought we were, right? And so when we're creating from the ego, and you can create from the ego amazing things, but it will always be limited, because when we create from the ego, we're still creating from the lens of conditioning and the lens of the past. So for me, the question that I invite people to ask in that consideration of like trusting my soul is not what do I want, this limited sense of I, but asking a different question, which is, what is it that life is seeking to express through me? What is it that God is seeking to express through me? What is it that my soul is seeking to express? And rather than sort of like overlay your intention on it, just be available and open. Be available and open so that you can take the limitations off of life. And part of it is allowing yourself to be guided, allowing yourself, allowing life to guide you. And many times the guidance of your soul will not make sense to your logical conscious mind. In fact, if it makes total, complete sense to your logical conscious mind, it probably is not your soul. It's probably your logic and your mind and your conditioning that is trying to kind of calculate everything to keep you safe, because the true guidance from your soul is arising from a dimension of your being that is unconditioned, that is beyond your personality, so it often won't make sense. And so I think we have to begin to create the space in our life. The mind is like, the mind thinks it needs to understand everything because it's another strategy of control. Because if I can understand everything, then I can protect myself from getting hurt. So I think if we can just start creating the spaces in our life to be still, and the spaces in our life to just listen. We don't take time to listen, to just sit and listen. We're scrolling on our phones, we're online, we're driving, we got Netflix playing, there's 17 things happening, like the more I can do, multitasking, we're exercising while doing our makeup, while eating lunch, whilst using the toilet, whilst being on the phone with a friend, while sending an email simultaneously. 17 things going, it's like, what's and so I think in many ways we sometimes distract ourselves with busyness so that we don't have to listen to our soul, because on some level, at the deepest level, there's a part of us that knows everything, and we sense and intuit the part of us that knows everything. And sometimes that's scary, because oh shit, if I actually be still and I listen to my soul, then what? And so I think as a strategy, we sometimes avoid sitting still and listening because we're afraid of the truth and the guidance that we sense is bubbling under there. And so we busy ourselves. And as a result of busying ourselves, stay on the surface, as a result of staying on the surface, we create more karma and drama in our lives. But I think when we truly listen to our souls, the guidance of your soul, just because it doesn't make sense, doesn't mean it's not aligned. And often the guidance of your soul won't always appear to you in a loud siren bell. Sometimes it will be very subtle. Sometimes it will be a very gentle whisper. This is why we have to pay attention. So I would say create the spaces to listen. And what I have had to learn to do over decades, painfully, is one key for me is I stopped questioning. And I just started to become obedient. Turn left, turn left. You'll ask me, well, why are you going there? I have no idea. Turn right. Why? I have no idea. Why did you pick up I don't know. And so I think the more we can actually get comfortable with not knowing, it's like not knowing. I don't know what this means. Then we begin to cultivate. So giving up the need to know. Then I think it's important to cultivate the quality of curiosity. I don't know, but I'm available to finding out. I'm available to life revealing itself, to life showing me, let's see why I'm supposed to make this move. I think it's because of this, this, and this, but oh, maybe it's really over here, because sometimes the divine is a cosmic chess player that needs to move things around to position us to be receptive to certain things. And so I think curiosity is important. So I had to give up throughout my life needing to know. And so these days when I feel a sense, sometimes the sense is subtle. It's like, I've learned to lean into the, something's off. What if? Contact that person. There's a flow. There's something's kind of like my mind. I want to go over to the left, but there's a flow that's kind of moving to the right. And so I've learned to lean into that, and I've learned to stop questioning. Turn right, turn right. Turn left, turn left. Go up, go up. I don't know. People will say, well, what do you mean? I have no idea. But I've learned to trust that it will be revealed. And I think when we start to, on one level, it's very freeing, because you don't have to know shit. It's like you don't have to know how to fly an airplane. You just get in the plane and just let the pilot drive you. You just follow the direction of life and allow life to lead you. So on one level, it's very freeing. if you look at it from the flip side, because we often focus on, oh, it's so scary. On another level, if you don't need to know, just show up and go along for the ride, you know?
Mm. Yeah, just show up with curiosity and listening to that inner voice and being led by it. A lot of people, especially nowadays with the world the way it is,
Yes.
yeah, it's how it's a great way for people to approach what's going on in the world. Like I rabbit holed, the whole when the pandemic started, it's like, what is this? But I was listening to people that were empowering me, like Greg Braden, it was Bruce Lipton about how
Yeah.
amazing our bodies are and the ability to heal and what this is. So I was never afraid of it. I was always like not in the consciousness of fear. I knew I, could be, provided for and protected. And then you did an amazing podcast. I was trying to find it. It was probably in May of 2020. This is just after George Floyd.
Cool.
And yeah, just after George Floyd. And people were on the streets putting black boxes up on their Instagram. People were really confused. Before it felt like the great slowdown and everyone was in this together. And then it was just everyone was divided after that. Amazing podcast about how you don't have to go in the streets to protest. Protesting can be, getting on a podcast, sending an email to a friend, sharing something about how we are not our identities and that we are, we're God, we're spirit, we're all this, and we're putting it into these boxes of identities. And it seems like we're being put into more boxes nowadays with all these, pronouns and all, this movement that's happening that's putting people into these little boxes. And if you don't say the right thing, then they're going to get offended and you're going to get in trouble by it. But we're all coming back to who we all are as a spirit instead of all these 100 different identifications. So I know it's a touchy subject to go into, but
Let's go.
yeah, what is how do you see this and how what advice can you give people that are really like, what the hell's going on? Like, I am not this she, he, I am me. I am that I am.
Well, I am full stop. That's it. I am. And
exactly.
end of story, end of conversation. I am,
yes.
on one level. Look, we are infinite, and that's it. We are
Mm-hmm.
infinite consciousness. That's all.
Yeah.
There's really not much else to say. We are, you could say consciousness, which is what we all are, energy, pure consciousness, source, manifests itself as a multiplicity of form. Consciousness manifesting itself as a multiplicity of form, as me, you, Trump, Biden, Putin, whoever. And so in that sense, there's only one of us really here. And to me, life is like a cosmic play, a one man, one woman show with apparent, separation, consciousness manifesting itself as a multiplicity of form, seeking to experience itself in its totality and infinite expressions without limitations on any level, both ways. It's the all. And so for me, life is like a play. It's a Maya, it's an illusion, it's a play, it's a movie where I think at the end of the movie, when the veil drops, i.e. you die, or i.e. you truly wake up while you're alive from the limited identification of this mind-body mechanism illusion, you start seeing that it's like in a one-person play, you start realizing that it was being played by the one character. And that one character, which is the infinite itself, playing itself in all forms. And perhaps the greatest Oscar-winning performance ever by the infinite, playing itself as me, as you, as Trump, as Biden, as Judas, as Jesus, as it all, And so for me, that's sort of that higher level of things. But in this world, the way I see it also is this. I've learned to accept the nature of this reality. To me, this domain, this 3D human experience domain, is not the domain of infinite utopia and bliss. It's not. And it's not meant to be. So if you're looking for infinite utopia and bliss and kumbaya in this physical domain, it doesn't exist here. Jesus came. Buddha came, Lao Tzu came, freaking Ramana Maharishi came, and the world is still the world. after gazillions of years. So this, I think we have to understand the nature of this reality. We live in a world of interdependent, polaric opposites. That's the nature of life. This domain that you and I, we've incarnated in, having this conversation on this podcast through, is the realm of duality. It's the 3D. It's just how it is. And in the 3D, interdependent polaric opposites, plus minus, up, down, positive, negative, yin, yang, good, bad, light, dark, rich, poor. It's the Tao. It's physics. It's physics. And so I think when we stop looking for ultimate utopia and peace out here in the relative, in the changing, in the impermanent, you start realizing that the real dimension of true freedom and the real dimension of infinite bliss is not out here, it's inside of us. Mm-hmm. I mean, Jesus said the code, the kingdom of heaven is within. He didn't say the kingdom of heaven is in a Lamborghini, is in a six-pack, is in a Ferrari, is in a mansion. The kingdom of heaven is within your own consciousness. And at that dimension, which is that sort of transcendental realm that is beyond duality, that Rumi talked about, out beyond the field of right and wrong, I will meet you there. It's within us. It's what we all are. So at that level, we are all whole, perfect, complete. And that source of infinite bliss is within us. And so I think for me, when we stop looking for it out here, because we're not going to find it out here, up, down, yeah, it's just the way of life. When we can accept it, in other words, when we can accept that this world is the 3D, a realm of limitation. It's a realm of limitation. You know, doesn't mean some amazing things aren't possible, but you and I, our bodies will die. We can't just jump and fly. Now, maybe there's a few people that can, but I haven't seen them yet, you know, and so this world is a realm of limitation. And somehow, as souls, what we are is infinite and unlimited. We incarnate as infinity, infinite, unlimited, limitless consciousness into the limitation of this three-dimensional realm to play. We incarnate in this 3D realm of duality, which is limitation, in order to experience the limitation, not to be limited, but to actually, through limitation, remember who you really are. Through limitation, awaken to the true reality of our unlimited nature. And how do you, in the game of life, how do you remember that you're unlimited if there's just nothing but unlimited around? That's an easy game to play. You just stay in the 5D, 7D, 800D, stay in another dimension. What's the point of incarnating into this video game of limitation if you already if everything is unlimited? So we incarnate to become masters in limitation. And to me, everything is really serving that. And so even the last few years, on one level, I have different opinions, but over the last few years, limitation, lockdowns, even that on some strange level, and I'm not saying I agree with some of the stuff that happened, but even on some strange level in the spiritual evolutionary video game that is called life, which is the process of awakening and evolution, limitation, lockdown, or even that is serving you and I, all of us, to find the source of freedom that is within. Because when we find the source of true infinite freedom that is within us, that we are, that you are beyond this physicality and limitation, then we become truly free. And then we become truly powerful. Then we realize that nothing outside of us, no government, no president, no person, nothing outside of us can lock you down, because your soul is free. It's like Mandela was in prison, but was not in prison. And many of us are free, but we're living in prison. The prison of mind, the prison of beliefs, the prison of limitation, the prison of childhood, the prison of fear. And so I think part of the game of limitation is to force us to awaken to the freedom that is our nature, so that we can be in the world but not of the world. And once we awaken to the shit, I am divine, I am unlimited, I am infinite, then we can start, you could say, relating to the world in a whole different way and become powerful creators of our reality and our experience in a whole different way. And so to me, life is just kind of like an energetic matrix of mirrors that's constantly reflecting to you, showing you who you are, who you are, who you are. But I don't like it. Tough shit. Life doesn't lie. It's showing you who you are, not to create suffering, but just so that you can see who you're being and what's going on, so that you can play the game of like, what experience do I want to have, and shift my experience so that life can also start shifting. But for me, the game is a beautiful game.
Mm-hmm. And the world is reflecting back to us things that we need to heal within our own self. And
Yes.
the world was a huge reflection of that. I had moved from Los Angeles to Portland. I didn't know why I followed that calling too. I just saw a vision and I went up there. And then lockdown happened. Like a couple months later, I'm sitting in my Portland place in the Mecca of confusion, a ball of confusion over there. And you know what? It caused me to wake up. I literally had to rabbit hole. Like I listened to all the spiritual teachings. I listened to you. I listened to all my leaders. And then as it dragged on, I rabbit holed. I went into that rabbit hole for like 2 years and went through the dark night of the soul, seeing what was going on in the world and being like, what the heck? And then I came back out of it. I know a lot of people over the last couple of years have gone down a certain rabbit hole, like not even paying attention to what was going on in the world. So it's about seeing the world and not being in it, or being of the, what is that expression? Being of the world, but not in.
Being of the world, but not being in the world, but not being of the world.
Yes.
Look,
And
and I think, you mentioned something that I want to just touch on, which is the world. Like, yes, a lot of folks, I think, we looked at the world like, oh my God, the world is fucked, the world is messed up. Oh my God, what like even as the veil lifts and you start waking up through the rabbit hole, it can also be a little bit depressing and sad and like, oh my God. But I think in many ways, the world that we see is a mirror manifestation and projection of the totality of the consciousness of all 8 billion of us combined. The world that we see is simply reflecting to us all of our consciousness that's projected out here onto the energetic screen that is called the world. In that sense, there is no world out here. The world out here is a reflection of all of our consciousness that is projected. And so I think we can look at a president, we can look at a Trump, Biden, whoever. To me, I don't really care about them. We can look at them and go, oh, this person is evil, this person is bad, this person is a liar, this person, and all of that, if we're not careful, can be a avoidance of looking at ourselves. Because if the world is a mirror manifestation of the totality of our consciousness combined, sometimes people might feel helpless, like, oh my God, what can I do? But I really believe that if we're willing to take responsibility and start with, okay, where do I lie? Where do I lie? Where am I out of integrity? Where do I BS? Well, this politician, where do I BS? Where do I play games? Where do I manipulate? Where do I lie to myself about who I am and what I feel and about my relationships? Where do I lie? Because if the world is a projection, the leaders, the presidents, the mayors, the heads of state, they're really manifestations of our consciousness. And so when we can say, okay, I may not be able to change everything out here, but I can change myself in here. This is what we can do. And if we're willing to say, you know what, I'm going to own my projection and I'm going to look at where I've been living out of integrity. Where have I been cheating? Where have I been stealing? Where have I been not true to myself? Where have I been lying? And own that and start bringing yourself into alignment. Where do I drop bombs of, where am I at war within myself? Where do I drop bombs of self-hatred on myself? Where do I drop bombs of gossip and malice on those around me that I don't like? We want peace on the world, but I won't even call up my sister and say, hey, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My ego's getting in the way of apologizing, even though I think I'm right. I know I'm right, but I'm sorry. Let's make peace. But we want peace in Ukraine and peace in Russia and peace in Somalia, yet often we won't reach out and make that first move and humble ourselves. And so I think what we can all do is we have the power to transform our inner reality. I think when we transform our inner reality, then since everything and everyone is interconnected, that when we transform, we will affect the fabric of consciousness for all humanity and open that possibility for all humanity, and it will shift the frequency if we all do our part. But also, as we transform and heal ourselves, and you could say excavate the sort of depths of our own shadows and secrets that we've pushed down inside of the depth of our own subconscious, and bring them out and bring those parts of ourselves out to the light so that we can bring loving to them and bring healing and integration and healing the division between ourselves, our authentic nature, our divinity, our humanity, then we impact the planet. And then when we go out in order to protest or to take some action, we no longer go out into the world and reinforce the karma and reinforce the suffering that's there. We're coming from a more healed and whole place. And when we come from the place that is more integrated, our actions, our words come from a different alignment and have a different impact and have a different effect. That's what I sense.
So it's like you said, the kingdom of heaven is within, and we're taking radical responsibility for our own, not placing the blame out there. It's them, it's you, it's you. It's like, that's what we're seeing happen out there. But when we can bring it home to ourselves, that's where where change can happen.
Yes. And I think that's what we can do. And I think if we do that, we're doing our part. If we do that, because what use is it trying to go out and march for peace when we hate our sister, when we hate our father, when we won't even pick up the phone and call our father, but we want to go march on the streets of downtown LA to bring peace? Doesn't energetically, it doesn't quite work that way. Our consciousness is still contributing to suffering, contributing to hate, contributing to division. And so I think we have to be willing to take responsibility, for sure, and play our part in this. To me, life is still beautiful, despite it all. To have, the way I've seen it and perceive it, to have this opportunity to live life and experience all the flavors of life. To me, if everyone believed what you believed, how boring would that be? If everyone voted for the exact person, if everyone believed what what would be the point of this incarnation? And so I think part of it is to realize, can we realize the beauty in the total rainbow and diversity of experience, so that we can experience and remember the underlying inherent oneness that is underneath it all. And that's why I go back to the first thing I said, is consciousness manifesting as a multiplicity of form, but really it's a one-person show. It's a one-being show. Trump, Biden, they're being played by the same infinite intelligence and character. And God is the ultimate actor that will win the Oscar in the play that is life. They appear separate on the surface, but really it's just one. Because look, if there were no sick people, would there be Mother Teresa? If there was no Judas, would there be Jesus? If there was no apartheid racist folks, and I'm not saying I'm condoning that, obviously, let's just make that clear, but would there be a Mandela? And so on some level, the coin is one. The flip side of that coin is just one coin. We're one humanity, one consciousness, just experiencing itself, And so I think for me, life is still, despite its challenges, despite its heartbreak, is devastatingly beautiful. For me, would life be so precious if we didn't have death? We just live forever. Okay. I mean, it sounds like nobody you love ever dies. Maybe. But for me, when my mother died in 2017, I write about it in my book. It was incredibly painful, incredibly heartbreaking, but it cracked me open to the sheer beauty and preciousness and just gift that life is. So if there was no death, would life have value? Would life be as beautiful? And so life isn't beautiful because it's perfect. To me, life is beautiful because it contains the whole. And not that it's always easy, and not that it's always pleasant, and not that there's not tears, but what would the laughter mean if there weren't tears? You know?
Mm-hmm.
And what would the tears mean if there was not laughter?
Yeah, we can't have one without the other.
It's the Tao.
Yeah, the light side of the moon, the moon and the sun, you have to have polar opposites. And that leads me into, I know that we've got to go. There's so many different topics we could go into. I know you're a champion of the divine feminine and there's polarities and all that. I'd love to, are you still doing the man breakthrough experience?
I'm not doing
no,
those. Yeah.
no, you're not doing those anymore. So I know that Boundless Bliss Bali,
Yes.
you are going to do, it's your last one. I just got your email that it's going to be your last one in December.
December's the last one, yeah. Unless God has other plans, but yeah, I'll never say never, but yeah, it's pretty much going to be the last one. I've done 21 of them. This will be number 22, December the 5th through the 6th. Yeah.
Okay. So that's going to be in December. And where can people reach out to you and find you or work with you?
Yeah, I would say if you feel inspired, Bali, you can go to www.boundlessblissbali.com, find out more information. For those of you that feel a calling to make a difference on the planet, for those of you that feel ready to heal and transform layers of your conditioning, connect with your authentic nature and share your gifts with the world, you can go to that website, www.boundlessblissbali.com. My main website, Kute Blackson, Kute, kuteblackson.com. You can find out a whole bunch of info there about my events, upcoming and new events that I'm going to be launching in the upcoming months, and online courses. Instagram, Kute Blackson, Facebook, Kute Love Now. Obviously, the book, The Magic of Surrender, people can find it on Amazon, the paperback version.
Yes, and your Soul Talk, your podcast.
Soul Talk podcast, yes. You can listen in for free.
Yes, it's excellent. And I'll put that in the show notes. Well, I've so loved having you on. Before we go, there's one more question that I ask all my guests. What does it mean for you to live with an awakened heart?
Wow. I think for me to live with an awakened heart is to live connected to my truth and live connected to the truth of who I am, which is divine. I think when we connect to our own divinity, the heart awakens naturally, and we're able to share that with the world, because then we realize that what I am is love. And when we don't awaken to who we are, then we think that love is something that you need to get outside of yourself. That love is something you need to do in order to achieve, in order to get. Then we spend our entire lives becoming who we think we need to be to get the love that we think we need to get and attain and achieve, always chasing it, never fulfilled, never awakened, never living from the heart. But when you realize that your nature is love, what you are is love, that love is not something you need to achieve or get, it's your nature, then the heart can open, because it doesn't have to close to sort of attain or get something, but it's open to just give and share what you are naturally. And so it's realizing that what you are is love.
Beautiful. Love now.
Love now.
Right. Well, Kute, thank you so much for coming on. Everybody, you need to pick up The Magic of Surrender and also his other book. It is You Are the One. You Are Not the One. That will be the next one. Thank you, Kute. So good having you on. Everybody needs to seek him out. He is amazing. Thank you.